At 3:41 a.m., with a toothbrush in my mouth and one shoe already tied, I discovered that revenge could look embarrassingly ordinary. No thunder split the sky. No ancestral ring glowed on my finger. No ghost stood at the foot of the bed to explain why I had returned to the night before the Crown Bridge qualifying examination, the exam that decided which students from our academy would enter the National Civil Service College, and which ones would spend the rest of their lives pretending they never cared. There was only the beige hotel bathroom of the Solmere Grand, the sink light flickering above my head, a paper cup crushed in my left hand, and my own reflection staring back at me with toothpaste foam at the corner of her lips. I had died at 23 with a disciplinary stamp across my academic record, a ruined family name, and a final memory of my classmates applauding while Clarissa Vane cried on stage and accepted the seat that had once belonged to me. I had returned at 17 with a hotel keycard, a suitcase half-packed, and every stupid, small detail of the disaster intact. The fire alarm that would ring at 6, the fake breakfast meeting Clarissa would announce at 7, the group bus that would leave at 7:30, and the wrong examination paper sealed inside room B of the old convention center, like a baited hook. In my first life, I had not known any of that. I had believed the teachers when they said the class should stay together. I had believed Clarissa when she said she only wanted to follow my study routine because I was so naturally calm under pressure. I had believed my classmates when they stood outside my room the night before the exam begging for my notes, my timing plan, my breakfast choice, my route, my lucky pen, my entire mind broken into pieces small enough for them to swallow. So I gave them everything. I let them watch me highlight my admission slip. I let them photograph my folder. I even let Clarissa sit beside me on the bus and ask, in that honey voice of hers, whether I thought the essay section would focus on public ethics or administrative law. The next morning, when the exam board announced that the paper in our testing room had been invalidated because of a suspected leak, Clarissa produced screenshots of my notes, my marked timetable, and my private annotations. She said I had known about the leak. She said I had guided the class deliberately. She said she was only a frightened student following the person everyone trusted. The others nodded, because fear makes cowards sound reasonable. And then, because life has a cruel sense of theater, Clarissa was allowed to res it as a misled witness, while I was barred as the probable source. That was my first life. This time, I spat the toothpaste into the sink, rinsed my mouth, and laughed so softly that the sound fogged the mirror. The class could copy me again. They could follow every step I left behind. They could sit exactly where they thought I was supposed to sit. I was not going to stop them. I was going to check out of the hotel before dawn and let them chase a ghost to the wrong paper. The hallway outside room 907 smelled like carpet cleaner and expensive panic. Every door along the 9th floor had a little gold number, and behind nearly all of them slept the students of North Hall Academy's senior honors class, the brightest cohort our school had produced in 10 years and the most spineless group of opportunists I had ever known. In public, they called me our class compass. In private, they called me a useful machine. I knew because, in my first life, I had found the group chat after everything collapsed. There were hundreds of messages, all posted the night before the exam, all written while they pretended to encourage me. Ask Evie what she's reviewing. Ask Evie what time she's leaving. Follow Evie's table at breakfast. If she looks nervous, the essay prediction is wrong. If she takes coffee, copy. If she takes tea, copy. Clarissa had run the chat like a general, assigning classmates to watch me from different angles, turning my routine into communal property, then turning communal property into evidence against me when the wrong paper scandal broke. I saw those messages too late in my first life, after my scholarship had been revoked, after my father's small law office lost clients because newspapers loved phrases like exam fraud daughter, after my mother stopped opening curtains because photographers parked outside our house. This time, I had screenshots in my memory sharper than photographs. I knew who typed the cruel jokes. I knew who pretended to defend me and then forwarded my notes to Clarissa. I knew who cried at the hearing and who smiled when I was removed. So I moved through the hotel quietly, suitcase wheels lifted off the carpet so they would not rattle, stopping only once in front of room 912. Clarissa's room. A silk sleep mask hung from her door handle like a flag of victory. Under it, taped neatly to the wood, was a pink sticky note written in her perfect handwriting. Breakfast strategy meeting, 7 o'clock sharp, lobby conservatory. Everyone come. Do not bother Evie unless necessary. I almost admired the confidence. Do not bother Evie unless necessary meant bother Evie immediately if she made an unexpected move. It meant Clarissa had already placed herself at the center of the morning, already rewritten the class's anxiety into her leadership, already prepared to say later that she had merely organized everyone for safety. I pulled a black marker from my coat pocket and, for one delicious second, considered writing a message across her little note. Something childish, maybe. Good luck with paper B. But revenge that announces itself too early is just anger wearing costume jewelry. I left the note untouched. Instead, I slid a sealed envelope halfway under my own door, where anyone checking on me would see it, and continued toward the lift. Inside the envelope was a copy of the schedule I had used in my first life. Breakfast at 7 o'clock, group bus at 7:30, convention center east entrance at 8:05, room B registration at 8:20, candidate line C at 8:40. It was accurate enough to seduce them and wrong enough to bury them. At the bottom, in my own handwriting, I had added the sentence Clarissa would not be able to resist. Do not separate from the class. The board may treat split candidates differently if there is a paper issue. I could almost hear her voice reading it later, soft with fake concern, telling everyone they had to stay together, because Evie had written so. That was the first trap. Not a lie exactly. A mirror. The lobby of the Solmere Grand looked haunted at that hour, all marble columns, dim chandeliers, and staff who moved as if they had been trained not to disturb rich people's nightmares. Behind the reception desk, a night clerk with copper hair and tired eyes looked up from a crossword when I placed my keycard in front of her. "Checking out, miss?" she asked, glancing at the clock behind her. "Before 4. Her tone held no judgment, only curiosity, which made me like her immediately. In my first life, I had never met her. I had been asleep upstairs, dreaming of merit and fairness like an idiot while the system quietly prepared the blade. "Yes," I said. "I need a printed receipt with the exact checkout time. Full name and room number visible." She blinked once. "Of course." While she typed, I watched the lobby doors reflect the dark street outside and remembered another document from my first life, one I had found after the hearing when a sympathetic assistant registrar sent me a folder of records that should have saved me but arrived 3 months too late. At 4:12 a.m. on exam morning, the Crownbridge board had sent a confidential notice to registered candidates who had not opted into academy-supervised transport. The notice said that a sealed examination packet delivered to the convention center had been compromised during overnight storage, so independent candidates were being redirected to the North Annex Testing Hall, where the valid paper A, would be administered under emergency verification. Academy-supervised groups, however, were supposed to be handled by their chaperones because their transport lists had already been submitted. The problem was that our chaperone, Deputy Headmaster Auric, loved convenience more than rules. In my first life, he ignored the alert, kept us on the bus, and delivered the entire class to the convention center because changing venues would create confusion. The exam board later argued that the academy had received notice and failed to comply. Auric argued that I had influenced the route because every student's statement mentioned my timetable. Clarissa argued that she had trusted me. The class argued that they had trusted Clarissa trusting me. Everyone formed a little chain of innocence and tied it around my neck. This time, I had spent the evening before changing one detail that had seemed insignificant in my first life. I withdrew from academy-supervised transport. I did it quietly through the candidate portal, using the excuse of motion sickness, and downloaded the confirmation before the system locked at midnight. That meant the board would send the emergency notice directly to me. It also meant that anyone following my old hotel routine would no longer be following an official candidate. They would be following a memory. The printer behind the desk coughed, then produced my receipt. The clerk handed it over with both hands. "Room 907, checked out at 3:58 a.m. Is everything all right?" I folded the receipt into my passport wallet. "It will be." She studied me for a moment, perhaps noticing that I spoke like someone much older than my face. Then she lowered her voice. "There's coffee in the business lounge if you need it before you go." I nearly refused, then changed my mind. Revenge did not require exhaustion. I thanked her, walked to the empty lounge, and made myself a cup so bitter it tasted like a dare. At 4:14 a.m., while the city outside was still blue-black and wet from overnight rain, my phone vibrated with the message that had arrived too late to save me in my first life. Crownbridge Qualifying Examination Board. Emergency venue update for independent candidate Evangeline Marrow. Report to North Annex Testing Hall, Gate 3, by 8:15 a.m. Valid examination form, Paper A17. Do not report to Solmere Convention Center. Paper B series invalid pending chain of custody audit. Present ID, admission slip, and independent transport confirmation. I read it 3 times. Not because I doubted it, but because there is a special kind of satisfaction in seeing the future admit it has rules. Then I took screenshots, forwarded the notice to the secure evidence address I had created the week before, and placed my phone face down on the lounge table. On the chair beside me sat the little navy folder that everyone expected me to carry. It was not my real folder. The real one, with my admission slip, independent transport confirmation, and updated venue notice, was zipped inside my coat lining. The navy folder held decoys, my old study timetable, my first life route map, a printed screenshot of the academy transport list before my withdrawal, and 3 pages of handwritten predictions designed to look anxious and private. I had written them carefully the previous night with a kind of uneven pressure I used when tired, because Clarissa knew my handwriting better than some people knew their own birthdays. Page 1 predicted that the essay would involve emergency procurement ethics. Page 2 suggested that the multiple-choice section would repeat themes from the leaked regional practice packet. Page 3 contained a warning circled twice. The board sometimes uses alternate paper sets but scores them equally. Do not panic if room says B. It was beautiful poison. All the more lethal because every line sounded exactly like something I might have written before rebirth taught me that being useful is not the same as being loved. I did not leave the folder in the lounge. That would be too obvious. Instead, I walked back upstairs after 20 minutes, slipped into the service stairwell, and returned to the 9th floor just as the hotel's heating system began to groan awake. No one saw me slide the navy folder into the gap beneath the side table outside my door, where Clarissa's watcher would find it only if she crouched to inspect whether I had left. In my first life, that watcher had been Mina Rowe, a girl who borrowed my chargers, cried before every exam, and later testified that I seemed secretive and controlling. At 5:02 a.m., I heard a soft shuffle from the far end of the hall and stepped into the emergency exit alcove, holding the door open a crack. Mina appeared in slippers and an oversized academy hoodie, hair flattened on one side, phone camera already raised. She knocked on my door softly. "Evie." No answer. She tried again. Then she bent, noticed the envelope, took it, and immediately saw the folder half hidden beside the table. Her eyes widened with the greedy fear of someone finding treasure she planned to call evidence. She photographed the hallway, the envelope, the folder, my door number, everything. Then she ran toward Clarissa's room. I closed the stairwell door without a sound and smiled into the dark. By 6 o'clock, the hotel woke up exactly as I remembered. First the plumbing, then the doors, then the fire alarm. The alarm was not real. It never had been. In my first life, everyone blamed a toaster in the staff kitchen, but the records later showed no kitchen incident, no smoke, no maintenance report. Clarissa had pulled the alarm through one of the side corridors to force the class into the lobby early, where she could gather them before anyone checked their phones properly. Back then, I had stumbled downstairs in panic, still fastening my blazer, and found my classmates clustered around her like pilgrims around a saint. She held my timetable in one hand and her own phone in the other, telling everyone she had found my notes and that we should follow them because I had clearly researched the board's procedures. I had been too shocked to object convincingly. The sight of my folder in her hand made me look guilty before I even understood the accusation being prepared. This time, I was not in the building when the alarm screamed through the halls. I was across the street in a 24-hour laundromat between a sleeping delivery driver and a vending machine that sold 3 types of canned coffee and one suspicious egg sandwich. Through the rain-streaked window, I watched students spill out of the Solmere Grand wearing blazers over pajamas, clutching admission slips, laptops, Lucky Charms, and the desperate belief that proximity to the strongest student could substitute for preparation. Clarissa emerged last in a white coat, her hair already perfect, my navy folder pressed dramatically to her chest. She looked around, searching for me. When she did not see me, her mouth tightened for half a second. Then she became radiant. That was Clarissa's gift, turning inconvenience into performance faster than anyone could question it. She climbed onto the low stone edge of a planter and lifted her hand. Even through the glass, I could imagine her voice. "Everyone listen. Evie checked something. Evie left instructions. We cannot scatter. The board will penalize split candidates. We follow the plan." Mina stood beside her nodding fiercely, already earning her little share of borrowed authority. Deputy Headmaster Oric arrived in a wrinkled suit, irritated by the alarm and comforted by the existence of a simple plan he did not have to make. I watched him take the folder from Clarissa, scan the top page, and relax. Of course he relaxed. A printed timetable looked official to a lazy man. Clarissa pointed toward the lobby conservatory, then toward the bus bay. The class moved. Not one person asked where I was. Not one person called my name with real worry. A few texted me, yes, but only the way fishermen tap the water to see whether something useful will rise. "Evie, where are you?" "Evie, Clarissa has your folder." "Evie, we're following your schedule, okay?" "Evie, answer now. Don't make this weird." I turned my phone to silent, bought the suspicious egg sandwich, threw it away after one bite, and waited until the bus pulled out at exactly 7:31, carrying 36 students, one useless chaperone, one stolen folder, and one smiling girl toward a paper that no longer counted. I did not go to the North Annex immediately. That would have been sensible, and sensible had gotten me destroyed once, because I mistook obedience for safety. Instead, I walked 3 blocks through the rain to a public library that opened early during exam season, rented a computer for 15 minutes, and uploaded every document into 3 separate places: the board evidence portal, a scheduled email to my family lawyer, and a cloud folder shared with myself under a name no one from school knew. My hands shook only once, when I attached the hotel receipt. A receipt is a small thing. A rectangle of paper. A transaction. A timestamp. But in my first life, the absence of that rectangle allowed people to place me wherever they needed me to be. Clarissa said I stood beside her at breakfast. Mina said she heard me warn students not to check alternate venue messages. Oric said I boarded late and sat near the front. The class said I looked calm on the bus. None of it was true exactly, but truth without documentation is just a person begging powerful strangers to believe her. This time, my receipt said I had checked out at 3:58. The library camera would show me at 7:48. The emergency notice would show I had been redirected as an independent candidate. The transport portal would show I had withdrawn before the alert. And Clarissa's own performance would show the rest. After uploading everything, I opened the class group chat. There were 92 unread messages. Clarissa had pinned a note: "We are proceeding as a supervised academy cohort according to Evie's discovered schedule." No one respond to strange individual notices unless confirmed by staff. Do not create confusion. My name sat there like a stolen seal. Under it, people had typed relief, gratitude, and little prayer emojis. One message from Tomas made me laugh out loud in the library quiet. Evie is probably already at the center checking things for us. She's intense but useful. Useful. I rolled that word around in my mouth until it lost shape. Then I typed one sentence into the group chat and did not send it. Good luck with paper B. I deleted it. Revenge is most elegant when the guilty walk themselves into the room. At 8:03, I left the library, hailed a taxi, and gave the driver the address for North Annex Gate 3. He glanced at my soaked blazer, my suitcase, and the admission slip in my hand. "Big exam?" he asked. "The biggest," I said. "You nervous?" Outside, the city blurred past in silver sheets of rain, every traffic light shining like a warning. I thought of Clarissa stepping off the bus at the convention center, lifting her chin, telling everyone to trust her while pretending they were trusting me. I thought of my first life hearing her tearful statement, the way she whispered sorry when reporters photographed us in the corridor. I smiled at the taxi window. Not anymore. North Annex Testing Hall looked nothing like the Solmere Convention Center, which was exactly the point. The convention center was glass, banners, escalators, and thousands of students pressed into lines like cattle with admission slips. North Annex was an old government training building with brick walls, narrow windows, and security so quiet it felt more dangerous than chaos. At Gate 3, a woman in a gray suit checked my ID, my admission slip, my independent transport confirmation, and the emergency notice. Her name badge read Senior Marshal Irina Cho. I knew that name. In my first life, she had chaired the disciplinary review that destroyed me, not because she was cruel, but because the evidence presented to her had been arranged like a coffin. She believed documents. She believed timelines. She believed the first coherent story in a room full of panic. This time, I had made sure the first coherent story was mine. "You checked out of the Solmere Grand before the emergency notice?" she asked, comparing my receipt with her tablet. "Yes, Marshal." Why? That single word held more weight than accusation. I could have invented something noble, but lies create hooks. I withdrew from Academy Transport last night because I did not trust my classmates to stop copying my preparation plan. I wanted to travel alone. When the emergency notice came, I followed it. Her eyes lifted. "Copying your preparation plan?" "There is a history," I said carefully. "I submitted evidence through the portal this morning. It includes my transport withdrawal, hotel receipt, and screenshots of the class chat if the system has processed them." She did not react outwardly, but her thumb moved across the tablet. Somewhere behind her calm face, a file opened. "Wait here." She stepped aside and spoke into her earpiece. I stood beneath the awning listening to rain tick against the metal roof and felt the old fear rise from my stomach. It did not matter that I had planned carefully. It did not matter that I knew the truth. Institutions are machines built by people, and people can always decide the wrong thing if it is easier. Then Marshal Cho returned, and the fear shifted. "Your portal submission is logged," she said. "You will sit paper A17 in room 4 under independent verification. After the exam, you may be asked to provide a statement regarding the Academy cohort. Until then, do not communicate with other candidates." "Yes, Marshal." She stamped my admission slip with a red mark I had never seen in my first life. Verified redirect. The sound of the stamp hitting paper went through me like a door locking behind an enemy. I entered room 4 with 12 other redirected candidates, most of them from different schools, all pale with nerves but present in the right place. The desks were spaced widely. The sealed packets on the proctor's table were marked A17. My seat was near a window where rain made the morning look underwater. When I sat down, I placed my real pencil case on the desk, folded my hands, and waited. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, nobody was looking over my shoulder. At 8:42, while I was reading the instructions for paper A, Clarissa was apparently delivering a speech at the wrong center. I learned this later from 3 sources: the board incident summary, a video leaked by an angry classmate, and Clarissa herself during the appeal that failed so spectacularly it became training material. But even as I sat there, pencil poised above the first question, I could imagine the scene with painful clarity. The Solmere Convention Center East entrance would have been crowded with candidates from regional academies assigned to the B Series administration before the chain of custody alert. Room B would still be open because the board had not canceled the session outright. They needed candidates from unaffected lists to complete a non-scored comparative paper for audit and calibration purposes. That was the detail Oric missed. Paper B existed. Paper B had desks, proctors, answer sheets, even a timer. It looked like an exam to anyone too arrogant to read the updated candidate roster. The Academy cohort, arriving as a supervised group under an outdated transport list, would have been flagged at registration. A competent chaperone would have stopped there. Oric did not. Clarissa, holding my folder, would have insisted that split candidates were penalized and alternate notices were confusing. The registrar, overwhelmed by hundreds of students, would have allowed them into the provisional room under manual notation pending identity review. That phrase sounds harmless. Manual notation. In practice, it meant every answer sheet they touched was marked for verification before scoring. They were not being rescued. They were being documented. Clarissa would not have seen that. She would have seen a room, a desk, a sealed paper, and 35 classmates watching her with gratitude. She would have sat under my old route, my old confidence, my old shadow, and believed she had successfully become the person everyone followed. I, meanwhile, turned to question 1 and almost laughed. The essay was not about emergency procurement ethics. It was about institutional accountability during examination irregularities. The prompt asked candidates to analyze how public bodies should balance fairness to individuals against protection of system integrity when a testing process is compromised. It was so precise, so viciously suited to the morning, that for one dizzy second I wondered whether the universe had a sense of humor after all. Then the proctor said, "You may begin," and my anger became handwriting. I wrote about notice, reliance, due process, evidence chains, administrative discretion, and the danger of punishing the convenient scapegoat instead of tracing actual causation. I wrote for my ruined first life. I wrote for my father closing his office blinds. I wrote for my mother learning not to answer the phone. I wrote until my wrist cramped and the rain stopped hitting the windows. Around me, candidates scratched and sighed and turned pages. No one copied me. No one whispered my name like a resource. No one smiled 3 rows ahead with my life in her bag. It was the quietest exam I had ever taken, and because of that, it felt like war. The first interruption came at 10:17, halfway through the analytical reasoning section, when Marshall Cho entered room 4 and spoke softly to the head proctor. No one else looked up, but I did because rebirth had trained me to fear doors opening during exams. The head proctor glanced at me, then at the seating chart, then nodded. Marshall Cho did not approach my desk. She only stood near the front for a moment, reading from her tablet with an expression as flat as winter water. Later, I learned that this was when the convention center finally escalated the North Hall situation. The manual notation clerk had cross-checked the Academy transport list against the emergency update and discovered something impossible. One candidate named Evangeline Marrow had withdrawn from the supervised group, checked in as an independent redirect at North Annex, and was actively sitting paper A under verified conditions, while an entire class at Solmere had presented a preparation schedule bearing her name as justification for ignoring the redirect protocol. Worse for them, several students had submitted phones at Room B registration containing screenshots of Clarissa's pinned instruction not to respond to individual notices unless confirmed by staff. The board did not need to guess who had led them. Clarissa had kindly put herself in writing. At 10:32, Room B's proctor paused the session at the convention center. I did not see it, but I have replayed the video enough times to know every movement. The proctor, a thin man with a voice like dry paper, walked to the front and said, "Candidates from North Hall Academy, remain seated. Your answer materials are being collected for verification. Do not continue writing." At first, no one understood. Pens kept moving. Then he repeated it, and the panic began. Clarissa stood, which was always her first mistake when authority entered a room. She believed standing made her visible, and visibility had protected her all her life. "Excuse me," she said, smiling in the way adults called mature and girls called terrifying. "We are under Academy supervision." Deputy Headmaster Oric confirmed this room. The proctor looked at his clipboard. "Your cohort was subject to redirect notice. Your materials are not currently scorable." Not currently scorable. A phrase like a guillotine wrapped in velvet. Tomas shouted that they had followed Evie's schedule. Mina waved the envelope from under my door. Someone else said Clarissa had told them individual messages might be fake. The proctor asked who Clarissa was. The video shakes there because the student recording it nearly dropped her phone. Clarissa, surrounded by the classmates she had trained to follow her, suddenly discovered that followers become witnesses the moment the road ends. By the time Marshall Cho left my exam room at North Annex, Paper B had been frozen for the North Hall cohort, every answer booklet sealed in gray evidence bags, and Clarissa's name written at the top of an incident file she had not yet seen. I returned to question 31, filled in option C, and felt almost peaceful. When the exam ended at 12:30, nobody clapped, because serious exams end like hospital procedures, quietly, with people checking whether they are still alive. The head proctor collected our answer booklets, counted them twice, sealed them, and dismissed us row by row. I stepped into the corridor with legs stiff from sitting and found Marshall Cho waiting beside a vending machine that hummed like an insect. "Miss Marrow," she said, "come with me." Those words had ruined me once. In my first life, they led to a conference room, a panel, and Clarissa crying into tissues while my classmates described me as brilliant but unstable. This time, they led to a small administrative office where a recorder sat in the middle of the table and a second official, a man named Director Pell, offered me bottled water before asking permission to take my statement. Permission. Such a small courtesy. I almost cried from the shock of it. Instead, I sat straight and told them everything that could be proven. I did not say Clarissa was evil. I did not say Mina was a snake. I did not say Auric was lazy enough to be dangerous. I said that I had withdrawn from academy transport at 11:43 p.m. due to concerns about classmates copying my preparation. I said I checked out at 3:58 a.m. and received the emergency redirect at 4:14. I said I did not attend the breakfast meeting, did not board the bus, did not instruct anyone to ignore official notices, and did not authorize anyone to use my notes as guidance. Then Director Pell placed my decoy schedule on the table inside a plastic sleeve. Seeing it there was strange, like seeing a shed skin labeled as evidence. "Is this yours?" he asked. "The handwriting is mine," I said. The document was left in my hotel room area after I checked out. It was not distributed by me, and it does not reflect my official candidate status after midnight. Did you intentionally leave it to mislead the cohort? There it was. The dangerous question. The thin bridge over deep water. I looked at the recorder, then at Marshall Cho. "No," I said, and the word was true in the only way that mattered. I left personal notes behind because I no longer needed them. I did not instruct anyone to enter my room area, remove them, circulate them, or treat them as superior to board notices. If they relied on private notes taken without my permission instead of official instructions, that was their choice. Marshall Cho's eyes held mine for half a second longer than necessary. She understood. Maybe not everything, not the rebirth, not the years of ruin folded inside my 17-year-old body, but she understood the shape of the trap and the shape of the people who had stepped into it. Director Pell wrote something down. "Were you aware that Miss Clarissa Vane pinned a message attributing the schedule to you?" "I saw it in the group chat after the bus had left," I said. I did not respond because the emergency notice instructed redirected candidates not to communicate with other candidates. This was not entirely true. The notice said to avoid unauthorized coordination, not silence. But it was close enough to stand, and unlike Clarissa, I had learned not to decorate lies until they became visible from space. The interview lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, Marshall Cho walked me to the exit and said, quietly, "Go home, Miss Marrow. Do not speak to your classmates today." I almost smiled. I do not think they want to speak to me. Her expression did not change. You may be surprised. She was right, of course. My phone became a burning building the moment I turned it back on. 187 messages. 40 missed calls. Voice notes, private messages, group chat explosions, unknown numbers. 3 emails from Deputy Headmaster Auric marked urgent, and 1 text from Clarissa that simply said, "Evie, what did you do?" Not what happened. Not are you safe. Not we need to explain. What did you do? Accusation is the native language of people who expected you to remain useful. I sat in the back of a taxi outside North Annex, suitcase pressed against my knees, and read the group chat while the driver argued with traffic under his breath. The transformation was almost artistic. At 7:05, they had praised Clarissa for taking charge. At 8:20, they had thanked her for keeping everyone together. At 9 o'clock, they posted jokes about paper being easier than expected. At 10:35, the messages became knives. Why are they collecting our papers? Clarissa said this was valid. Auric looks scared. Someone call Evie. Did Evie set us up? Clarissa, where did you get that folder? Mina, you said you found it under her door. Why were you outside her door? Tomas, stop yelling. They said Evie is at North Annex. What do you mean Evie is at North Annex? After that, the chat dissolved into voice notes and blame. Clarissa posted only once. Everyone remained calm. We followed the schedule available to us in good faith. Do not make statements without me. Without me. Even now, she tried to place herself between them and the truth, as if authority could be maintained by formatting panic into instructions. I did not answer. Not because I had nothing to say, but because silence can be a room where guilty people hear themselves more clearly. At home, my mother opened the door before I knocked. She was wearing her gardening cardigan, the green one with a missing button, and when she saw my suitcase and wet hair, her face went white. In my first life, I had come home to accusation already spreading across news sites. I had tried to explain while my phone rang, and my father shouted questions from his office, and my mother asked whether I had eaten, because mothers reach for ordinary care even when the world collapses. This time, I handed her the printed receipt, the emergency notice, and the statement copy Director Pell had allowed me to keep. I'm safe, I said first, because I had learned what order mattered. I sat the correct paper. The class followed Clarissa to the wrong one. There will be an investigation. My mother read the documents slowly. Then she sat down on the entry bench, as if her knees had lost language. Clarissa Vane, she whispered. Yes. The girl who came to dinner last month and asked for your lemon tart recipe? That was also theft, I said, and for one absurd second we both laughed. The laugh cracked something in me. I put my suitcase down, leaned against the wall, and let my mother hold me while the phone kept buzzing in my pocket like a trapped insect. The academy tried to control the story by sunset, which was stupid because teenagers with ruined futures leak faster than government pipes. North Hall sent a formal email stating that a logistical irregularity affected a portion of candidates and that the academy is cooperating fully with the board. Deputy Headmaster Auric sent a separate message to parents insisting that all students had been guided by documents believed to originate from a high-performing peer. He did not name me. He did not have to. By 7 that evening, 3 parents had called my father's office demanding to know why his daughter had misled their children. By 8, my father, who had spent my first life begging people to wait for evidence, was standing in our kitchen with his sleeves rolled up, drafting a reply that sounded polite enough to frame and sharp enough to draw blood. We are not defending against rumors this time, he said, tapping the printed receipt with one finger. We are serving notice. This time. He did not know why I flinched at those words. He meant this exam, this incident, this version of the world. I heard first life and second life rubbing together like broken glass. We sent the academy a letter before midnight. Preserve all communications regarding Evangeline Marrow, Clarissa Vane, the Solmere Grand, transport arrangements, candidate notices, and any statements attributing guidance to Evangeline without her written consent. We copied the exam board. We copied the academy governors. We copied, at my insistence, Marshall Cho. My father raised an eyebrow when I gave him her email. You are very prepared for a 17-year-old. I had a feeling, I said. That is not an answer. No, I admitted. But it is the only one I can give tonight. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Good fathers know when the whole truth is too heavy for one evening. The next morning, the investigation became official. Students were instructed not to contact one another about the incident. Naturally, they contacted one another constantly. Mina sent me a 6-minute voice note in which she cried, apologized, blamed Clarissa, blamed stress, blamed the fire alarm, blamed Auric, blamed the culture of competition, and never once blamed the moment she bent down outside my door and stole a folder that was not hers. Tomas wrote that we all made mistakes when afraid, and surely I did not want 36 lives ruined. I stared at that message for a long time. In my first life, 36 people had allowed one life to be ruined because saving themselves was convenient. Now, when consequence finally looked in their direction, they discovered morality in plural form. We all. Our futures. The cohort. I blocked him. Clarissa did not send another text. That was how I knew she had found a lawyer. The first hearing was not public, but the hallway outside the board offices made it feel like a theater lobby before a tragedy. Parents stood in tight clusters. Students wore uniforms too neat to be accidental. Oric looked as if he had aged 10 years in 2 days, which still left him looking less damaged than my father had looked after 10 months of scandal in my first life. Clarissa arrived wearing pale blue, the color she always chose when she wanted adults to think of innocence before evidence. Her mother walked beside her, chin high, pearls shining at her throat. Behind them trailed a lawyer with silver glasses and the expression of a man paid to turn mud into mist. Clarissa saw me near the water cooler and stopped. For the first time since my rebirth, her face showed something unpolished. Not guilt. Clarissa did not have enough unused conscience for guilt. It was calculation interrupted by fear. She approached before her lawyer could stop her. "Evie," she said softly, and every parent within 10 feet pretended not to listen. "I don't know what you think happened, but we need to be careful. If this becomes hostile, everyone loses." In my first life, she had said almost the same thing outside the disciplinary room. "If this becomes hostile, Evie, they'll think you're unstable." Back then, I had begged her to tell the truth. I had grabbed her sleeve. She had looked down at my hand as if I were dirt. This time, I folded my arms. Everyone already lost when they sat the wrong paper. Her eyes shimmered on command. "You left the schedule. You took it. Mina found it outside my room after I checked out. You knew we would rely on it. You knew it was not yours." Her mouth tightened, and for a second the blue dress, soft voice, and trembling lashes could not hide the person beneath. "You think you're safe because you ran first?" "No," I said. "I'm safe because I documented first." The lawyer touched her elbow. She stepped back, tears already gathering for the room where tears might still matter. I watched her go and felt no triumph, only a cold steadiness. Revenge in imagination is fire. Revenge in practice is paperwork, patience, and the discipline not to scream when the person who ruined you calls herself a victim. Inside the hearing, the board separated us. I gave my statement first and answered every question plainly. Yes, I withdrew from transport. Yes, I checked out early. Yes, I received and followed the emergency notice. No, I did not authorize Clarissa to use my notes. No, I did not instruct the cohort to ignore official communications. Yes, I had concerns about classmates copying me. Yes, I could provide prior examples. That was when the room changed. Director Pell had asked the question mildly, almost as an afterthought. I opened the folder my father had prepared and handed over printed screenshots from the weeks before the exam. Classmates asking for my answers to practice essays, Clarissa telling them not to bother studying topics I had not marked, Mina photographing my desk after study hall, Tomas joking that Evie's brain should be taxed as public infrastructure. The board members read in silence. Marshall Cho, seated at the end of the table, did not look surprised. She looked like someone watching fog lift from a road. Clarissa's hearing lasted much longer. We knew because the hallway emptied, refilled, and emptied again while her mother's pearls grew less steady against her throat. Students emerged one by one from side rooms after giving statements. Some looked angry, some shattered, some newly eager to become innocent by describing Clarissa's guilt in exquisite detail. Mina came out crying so hard her mascara had reached her collar. She saw me and took one step forward. My father moved slightly, not blocking her exactly, just reminding the world that I was not standing alone this time. Mina stopped. "Evie," she whispered. "I didn't know." I almost asked which part. She did not know that stealing private notes was wrong. She did not know that following Clarissa's instructions made her responsible. She did not know that I was human until the board treated her like one. Instead, I said, "Tell the truth inside." She nodded, devastated by a mercy too small to save her from consequence. When Clarissa finally emerged, the performance had cracked. Her eyes were red, but not prettily. Her lawyer spoke in low, urgent tones to her mother. Auric avoided looking at anyone. The board did not announce a decision that day because institutions like to pretend suspense is caution. But the outcome had already begun showing itself in small failures. Clarissa's mother no longer touched her shoulder. Auric no longer stood near the students. Parents no longer spoke of the cohort as one body. They separated into families, each trying to cut their child free from the others. That evening, the board issued interim findings. The North Hall cohort had sat a non-scorable paper after failing to follow an emergency redirect. Answer materials from Room B would be struck. Affected students could apply individually for discretionary resit consideration only if they demonstrated non-participation in unauthorized coordination. Candidates found to have circulated or relied upon misappropriated private materials could be denied resit eligibility. It was clean, brutal, and somehow still gentler than what they had done to me in my first life. My phone erupted again. This time, the messages had a different flavor. People no longer asked what I had done. They asked what I could do. Could I tell the board they hadn't known? Could I say Clarissa pressured them? Could I explain that everyone copied a little but nobody meant harm? Clarissa's text arrived at 9:16 p.m. It contained no greeting. Just one sentence. If you let them destroy me, you're no better than I was. I read it twice, then placed the phone on the kitchen table. My mother, who was making tea, glanced at my face. Bad. Desperate, I said. That can look similar. She poured hot water over the leaves. Are you going to answer? I thought of the First Life courtroom. The disciplinary stamp, the way Clarissa's tears had shone under fluorescent lights while my future was folded away. No, my mother nodded, as if I had passed a test no board could grade. The discretionary resit interviews began the following week, and that was where the class finally learned that copying has layers of consequence. Sitting the wrong paper was only the visible disaster. Underneath it lay the question of why they sat it, what they used to justify it, and whether they had ignored official notices because they were confused or because obedience to Clarissa promised access to me. The board subpoenaed hotel corridor footage. Mina appeared on camera at 5:02 a.m., taking the envelope and folder from outside my room. Clarissa appeared on camera at 5:09, opening both in her doorway while Mina watched. At 5:11, Clarissa photographed the contents. At 5:17, she sent the pinned message to the group chat. At 6:03, the fire alarm was pulled in the service corridor. The person on the grainy footage wore a hood, but Clarissa's white trainers with a silver heel stripe were apparently rarer than her lawyer hoped. At 6:11, she stood in the lobby holding my folder and told the cohort not to scatter. At 7:31, she boarded the bus first. All those moments, so soft and deniable when described by memory, became hard once arranged by timestamp. Auric tried to say he had exercised professional judgment. The board asked why his professional judgment relied on a student's private notes over an official candidate notice. He tried to say he never saw the emergency redirect. The board produced an email opened on his school-issued tablet at 4:29 a.m. He tried to say the situation was confusing. The board agreed, and then asked why, in confusion, he chose convenience over verification. It was almost beautiful. Not because adults failed, I had seen that enough, but because, for once, the failure had nowhere to hide behind my name. My classmates fractured quickly. The quiet ones claimed they never touched the folder. The ambitious ones claimed Clarissa misrepresented the board rules. The cruel ones claimed everyone pressured everyone. A few admitted the truth with surprising plainness. They followed because they believed I knew best, and Clarissa had obtained my plan. Those students were reprimanded, but eventually allowed to resit months later under strict conditions. Others, including Mina and Tomas, received harsher penalties for unauthorized possession and circulation of private materials. Auric was suspended pending employment review. Clarissa fought hardest. She argued she had acted to protect the cohort. She argued that the notes were abandoned. She argued that I had intentionally set a trap. That last argument almost worked emotionally, if not legally, because people are uncomfortable when victims stop being soft. But the board's response was devastating in its simplicity. Even if a document is unreliable, candidates are obligated to follow official instructions, not stolen private materials. Even if Evangeline Marrow anticipated misconduct, no candidate was entitled to commit it. I printed that sentence and kept it in my desk drawer for years. The final decision came on a Friday afternoon in a room with too much sunlight. By then, 3 weeks had passed, long enough for rumors to become ecosystems. Some students said I was a genius strategist. Some said I was cruel. Some said Clarissa had always been fake, which was funny because those same people had once orbited her like moons. I stopped caring around the second week, when my official paper A score arrived, 94th percentile overall, highest essay mark in the region. My father cried in his office when he read the email, though he pretended he had allergies. My mother bought a lemon tart from the bakery and wrote valid paper on it in icing, which was the first time I understood that healing can be ridiculous and still real. At the board office, Clarissa sat across the aisle in another pale dress, this one lavender. Her mother looked thinner. Her lawyer looked annoyed, which told me the decision was bad before anyone spoke. Director Pell read from a prepared statement. The North Hall Academy Room B answer materials were permanently struck as non-scorable for the affected cohort. Individual resit eligibility would be determined by involvement level. Deputy Headmaster Oric was referred to the Academy Governors and Professional Standards Body. Then came Clarissa. Candidate Clarissa Vane, found to have knowingly misappropriated another candidate's private preparation documents, circulated unauthorized instructions attributing guidance to that candidate, discouraged candidates from verifying official notices, and contributed materially to the cohort's attendance at an invalid paper administration, was denied discretionary resit eligibility for the current examination cycle and barred from applying for Crownbridge Associated Scholarship nomination for 2 years. The room went so quiet I heard someone's watch tick. Clarissa's face did not crumple at first. It emptied. That was worse. Without expression, she looked suddenly young, not innocent, just young enough for consequence to fit badly. Her mother made a sound under her breath. The lawyer touched his pen to the table and did not write. Clarissa turned her head slowly toward me. I expected hatred. I expected tears. I expected another performance. Instead, she whispered, too softly for the board but clearly enough for me, "You could have warned me." And there it was, the entire rotten center of her universe exposed in 4 words. Not I should not have stolen. Not I should have checked. Not I hurt you. You could have warned me. Even her remorse needed me to do the work. I looked at her and thought of the girl I had been in my first life, begging outside a hearing room, still believing that if I explained enough, people would become fair. "I did warn you," I said quietly. "For years, every time I told you my work was mine." Her eyes filled, but the tears came too late to be useful. Director Pell dismissed us. The decision was done. No dramatic collapse, no screaming confession, no crown torn from a head under spotlights. Just a file closing, a future narrowing, and a room full of people learning that the wrong paper is still wrong even when everyone sits it together. Returning to North Hall after the decision felt like walking through a museum built around a crime nobody wanted to label correctly. The trophy cases still shone. The honor boards still displayed names in gold. The senior study room still smelled like dry erase markers and overbrewed coffee. But people moved differently around me. Teachers stopped asking me to share strategies with the class. Students stopped leaning over my desk without permission. The empty chair beside me remained empty for 2 days before a new seating chart made the absence official. Clarissa had withdrawn for personal reasons. Mina transferred to the regular stream after her resit eligibility was delayed. Tomas avoided eye contact so thoroughly he once walked into a doorframe, which I enjoyed more than was spiritually admirable. The Academy held an assembly about academic integrity, delivered by Headmistress Vale with a solemn expression of someone discovering a fire after smelling smoke for years. She spoke of trust, responsibility, independent work, and the importance of verifying official instructions. She did not name the scandal. She did not apologize to me publicly. But after the assembly, she asked me to come to her office. My father wanted to attend. I told him I could handle it, then saw his face and added, "Wait outside." That seemed to satisfy both of us. Headmistress Vale's office overlooked the courtyard where students pretended not to stare at me through the rain. She offered tea. I declined. She folded her hands on the desk. "Evangeline, I want to acknowledge that the Academy failed to protect your independence as a candidate." It was a careful sentence, polished by legal advice until it barely breathed. Still, it existed. In my first life, no adult at North Hall had admitted failure until years later, and even then only privately, in tones designed to protect themselves from guilt.
"Thank you," I said.
She seemed surprised I did not demand more. I was tired. Not forgiving. Not satisfied. Just tired in a way 17-year-old Bones should not understand. "We would like you to consider serving on a student advisory panel about exam conduct next term." There it was, the institution's instinct to turn harm into unpaid service. I almost laughed. "No," the word landed between us like a dropped stone. She blinked.
"No."
"I am not interested in teaching my classmates not to steal from me." Her cheeks colored faintly. Outside the office, my father coughed in a way that might have been a laugh.
"E administres vale recovered."
"Of course. That is understandable." I stood. "I would like written confirmation that no teacher may require me to share notes, schedules, predictions, or preparation materials with other students." She hesitated, then nodded. "We can arrange that. And I would like the Academy to correct any internal records suggesting I contributed to the Room B incident." "That will be done." This time, I did smile. Not sweetly. "Please send both by Friday." When I opened the office door, my father looked at my face and wisely said nothing until we reached the car. Then he asked, "Did you just give the headmistress a deadline?" I buckled my seatbelt. "Yes." He started the engine, eyes suspiciously bright.
"Good."
The year did not become easy after that. Stories like mine pretend revenge is an ending, but in real life, consequence is only the first room you enter after escaping the basement. Some classmates resented me because their resits were delayed. Some admired me in a hungry way that felt too similar to how they had used me before. Teachers praised my resilience until I wanted to throw dictionaries at them. Clarissa's absence became a shape people filled with whatever made them comfortable. To her remaining friends, she was a victim of pressure, a brilliant girl ruined by one mistake. To those who had turned on her, she was a mastermind who had fooled them all. To me, she was something simpler and more frightening, a person who believed admiration was a permit. I focused on my own future with a selfishness that felt, at first, like sin. I studied alone. I ate lunch in the library courtyard when weather allowed, and in the archives when it did not. I stopped answering messages that began with "Can you just?" I learned to say no without explaining until the room approved. My paper A score earned me direct admission to the National Civil Service College, plus an interview for the Moreland Public Integrity Scholarship. That interview took place in a glass building overlooking the river, with 3 panelists who asked difficult questions and seemed pleased when I answered, without pretending difficulty was a flaw. One of them, an older woman named Sarah Malkin, asked me what I had learned from the examination irregularity. In my first life, I would have given a noble answer about fairness. This time, I gave the truth. "Systems do not become fair because honest people trust them quietly," I said. "They become fair when procedures are documented well enough that dishonest people cannot borrow credibility from silence."
Sera mal qu'un S peine posed.
"And what did you learn about leadership?" I thought of Clarissa on the planter, Oric with my folder, the class flowing after them because certainty is seductive when people are afraid. "Leadership without accountability is just permission to be followed into a mistake," I said. "I am more interested in building systems where people can question the person at the front." I received the scholarship 2 weeks later. My mother cried again. My father bought a frame for the certificate and hung it in the hallway, slightly crooked. For a while, I thought that was the final victory. Not Clarissa barred, not the wrong papers struck, not Oric suspended. The final victory was my name on a clean document, printed by an institution that had checked the evidence first. Then Clarissa came to my house. It was raining the night she arrived, because some people have no respect for subtlety. I found her standing outside our gate under a black umbrella, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of the pale dresses she used as armor. For one strange second, without the school corridors, the audience, the performance lighting of ambition, she looked like any other girl whose life had gone badly. Then she lowered the umbrella, and I remembered that ordinary faces can carry extraordinary entitlement. My father was working late. My mother was upstairs. I stepped onto the porch, but did not open the gate. "You cannot be here," I said. Clarissa's hands tightened around the umbrella handle. "I'm not here to fight. That is usually what people say when they are here to win differently." She flinched. "Good. I'm leaving the city," she said. "My parents are sending me to my aunt's place until next term. Different school, different board. I wanted to talk before I go." Talk. Apologize. The word sat awkwardly in her mouth, and used furniture in a room she did not own. I waited. Rain ticked on the gate between us. Clarissa swallowed. I should not have taken the folder. I should not have told everyone to follow it. I panicked. Everyone expected me to keep things together, and when you were gone, I thought, she stopped. I heard the missing ending anyway. I thought I could become you. I thought your work was a ladder, and your absence was permission. I thought if everyone followed me while holding your notes, no one would notice the difference. You thought what? I asked. Her eyes shone. I thought you had abandoned us. There it was again, reshaped but not gone. My disappearance, not her theft, remained the original sin in her telling. I checked out of a hotel, I said. I withdrew from transport. I followed official instructions. You turned that into abandonment because you needed my role without asking for my consent. She looked down. You make it sound so ugly. It was ugly. I lost everything. No, I said, and my voice stayed calm enough to scare even me. You lost the things attached to what you did. That is not everything. Everything is what you tried to take from me. She cried then, silently, which was almost worse than the theatrical version because it tempted the softer parts of me. The girl I had been before 2 lives of betrayal wanted to open the gate, make tea, explain consequence gently until we could both pretend understanding was repair. But another part of me, older and cleaner, kept my hand off the latch. I am sorry, Clarissa whispered. Maybe she meant it for 1 second. Maybe she meant she was sorry she had failed. Maybe human motives are muddy enough that both were true. I hope you become someone who would never do it again, I said. She looked up quickly, hope flashing like a match. I extinguished it. But you will not become that person by being forgiven by me. I went inside before she could answer. Through the window, I watched her stand at the gate for a long time, then walk away under the umbrella, getting smaller in the rain. The appeal hearing Clarissa filed in August was the last time she tried to put my name at the center of her defense, and by then I had become much harder to place there. Summer had burned the rain out of the city, leaving the board offices bright, dry, and mercilessly air-conditioned. Clarissa arrived with a new lawyer, a new haircut, and a new version of the story. In this one, she was not the organizer who pinned instructions or the candidate who held my stolen folder in the lobby. She was a traumatized student reacting to the sudden disappearance of a trusted peer. Her lawyer used that phrase 3 times before Marshall Cho interrupted and asked him to define disappearance. He said I had left the hotel without informing the cohort. Marshall Cho asked whether independent candidates were obligated to inform other candidates of transport changes. He said no, but morally, Director Pell stopped him there and reminded the room that appeals were not decided on wounded expectations. I sat behind my father, listening to adults discuss my absence as if it were an object on the table. Clarissa's lawyer argued that my decoy notes created foreseeable confusion. My father argued that stolen private notes do not become official instructions because thieves find them useful. The board replayed the hallway footage.
Mina bending.
Clarissa opening the folder. Clarissa photographing the pages. Clarissa pulling the alarm, or at least a hooded student wearing shoes that matched hers and walking with the same quick inward turn of the left foot. Then they played the lobby video with audio enhanced. Her voice filled the room, polished and calm. Evie planned for this. Evie said not to split. Evie knows how the board thinks. I watched Clarissa listen to herself using my name like a forged key. Her face did not change, but her fingers dug into her skirt until the fabric twisted. The appeal panel asked one question that mattered. If Clarissa believed the notes were genuinely mine, why did she not contact me before circulating them? Her lawyer began to answer. Clarissa interrupted him. Because she would have told me not to, she said. The room went still. It was the first honest sentence she had spoken in any proceeding, and it destroyed her more completely than another hour of argument could have.
Because she would have told me not to.
Not because she was unreachable. Not because there was no time. Because consent would have ruined the theft. The appeal was denied before lunch. After the appeal, I thought the story would finally loosen its teeth, but scandal has a way of living in small, irritating places. At the bakery, a woman behind us whispered that I was the girl who tricked her classmates. At the tailor, someone asked my mother whether it was true I had always been a bit intense. At school, younger students stared as if I might hand them a cursed timetable. For a while, anger followed me everywhere like a stray dog. I wanted to correct every whisper, chase every rumor, drag every lazy opinion into a room, and staple evidence to its forehead. Then my father took me to the old courthouse where he had started his career, a stone building with chipped steps and pigeons that looked personally offended by justice. We sat outside with paper cups of coffee, and he told me about his first case, a landlord dispute he had won legally and lost socially because the landlord's friends owned half the street. You cannot cross-examine a town, he said. You build a record strong enough that the town gets bored of lying. I hated that advice because it required patience, but it saved me. I stopped feeding rumors with reaction. I kept my records clean. I finished my final term. I let people be wrong in rooms I did not need to enter. Slowly, the story changed shape without my help. The bakery woman's daughter failed a practice exam after relying on someone else's notes, and suddenly her mother told everyone I had been right. The tailor's nephew lost a scholarship interview for copying a personal statement, and suddenly intensity became discipline. Younger students still stared, but some began asking different questions. How did you organize your evidence? How did you know when to stop explaining? How do you say no when people make sharing sound kind? I answered those questions when I had the energy, not because I owed anyone a lesson, but because I liked the idea of a future where useful girls learned boundaries before betrayal taught them with a knife. The strangest part was learning that peace did not arrive all at once. It arrived in scraps. It arrived the first morning I packed my own bag without checking whether someone had photographed my desk. It arrived when I bought a new Navy folder and did not feel sick looking at it. It arrived when I deleted the class group chat, not dramatically, not with shaking hands, but while standing in line for dumplings after school because I realized I had not opened it in 11 days. It arrived when my mother stopped pausing outside my room to see if I was crying. It arrived when my father replaced the deadbolt he had installed during the rumor storm with a normal lock because our house no longer felt like something under siege. Most of all, it arrived the first time another student asked for my notes and I said, "No, but I can tell you which chapter to read," and the world did not end. She blinked, thanked me, and went away. That was when I understood how little catastrophe honest boundaries actually create. The people who explode when told no are usually the ones who came planning to take more than they were offered. Years later, people would ask me about the Room B incident as if it were a legend that belonged to everyone. At the National Civil Service College, someone recognized my name during orientation and whispered, "You're the girl whose whole class sat the wrong paper." In my second year, a professor used the case anonymously in a lecture about administrative reliance and candidate misconduct, not knowing the subject was sitting 3 rows from the front taking notes. During my first internship at the Examination Integrity Commission, I found a redacted training file titled Samara Cohort Redirect Failure and laughed so hard in the archive room that my supervisor asked whether I was choking. The file was thorough. Emergency notice timeline, transport withdrawal logs, hotel footage, communication analysis, answer material chain of custody, disciplinary outcomes. My decoy schedule was reproduced on page 42 as unauthorized private candidate material. Someone had highlighted my handwritten warning about split candidates and added a margin note. Misleading private inference cannot override official notice. I stared at that sentence for a long time. In my first life, my handwriting had been treated as a weapon I used against others. In this life, it became evidence of others choosing convenience over rules. Same ink, different record. That is what rebirth gave me. Not magic exactly, but the chance to put facts in the right order before liars arrange them for me. Clarissa did not disappear completely. People like her rarely do, they rebrand. I heard she attended a smaller academy under her mother's maiden name, then studied communications, then built a career advising organizations on crisis messaging, which was either growth or cosmic comedy. Mina sent me an apology email during our final year of college. It was long, specific, and did not ask for forgiveness. I respected that enough to answer with 2 sentences. I hope you are doing better. Do not do to anyone else what you did to me. Tomas never apologized, but he once applied for a junior position at the commission where I worked. His application did not pass the integrity screening. I did not intervene. That was the best part. I did not have to. The systems I helped build were better at remembering than people. As for me, I became exactly the kind of official my first life needed and did not get. Inconvenient, document-obsessed, allergic to emotional shortcuts, and deeply suspicious of any room where everyone agreed too quickly. On my office wall, beside my degree and commission appointment, I kept the Solmir Grand checkout receipt in a plain black frame. Visitors assumed it was modern art or a private joke. In a way, it was both. A little rectangle of paper. 3:58 a.m. room 907. Proof that I had left before they followed. Proof that absence can be a boundary. Proof that when people insist on copying your path, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is step off it. So no, I did not sabotage my class. That is what people asked when they wanted the story to be simpler and me to be meaner. I did not forge the emergency notice. I did not force Clarissa to steal my folder. I did not drag Mina to my door, did not pull the fire alarm, did not pin the message, did not make Oric ignore his email, did not march 36 students into room B and place the wrong paper under their hands. I checked out of a hotel. I kept my documents. I followed the valid notice. I let people who had built a habit of copying me discover that copying without consent is not strategy. It is dependency wearing confidence. The strange mercy of my second life was that I finally understood responsibility as a map. Mine ended at the edge of my own choices. Theirs began where their hands touched what was not theirs. On the morning the class set the wrong paper, I sat the right one alone. That sentence still feels like sunlight. Alone used to terrify me. Alone meant unsupported, exposed, easy to blame. After Solmir, alone meant unborrowed. It meant my answers were mine, my route was mine, my silence was mine, my future was mine. And when the results were published, when my name appeared on the admission list without an asterisk, without a pending review, without Clarissa's shadow stretching across the letters, I printed the page and walked to the kitchen where my mother was making tea. She read it, covered her mouth, and started crying before I did. My father came in, saw us, and immediately looked terrified, because good news and bad news sometimes wear the same face at first. Then I handed him the paper. He read my name once, then again, then pressed the page to his chest as if it might vanish. I thought I would feel victory like fireworks. Instead, I felt a door opening quietly. No crowd, no speech, no apology large enough to repair the first life. Just a clean page and a road I had chosen for myself. Somewhere, Clarissa was learning that a crown made of borrowed certainty cuts the person wearing it. Somewhere, my classmates were discovering that moving together does not make a wrong direction right. And I, Evangeline Marrow, the girl they once called useful, stepped through that open door with my own name, my own score, and no one else's hand on the paper.